Hi, you're on the Movie Girl channel? Today I'm going to explain a film called Hart's War, set in Germany in 1945. Tom Hart is the son of a senator, and there's no danger of him going into the trenches. But he's always had a taste for adventure. He volunteers to deliver a case of champagne to a general at the front, but his car is stopped at a checkpoint and the guards start asking about the fuel depot. Tom's companion senses something is wrong and reaches for his gun, but he was shot in the head and Tom was knocked out. It turned out to be Germans in American uniforms. While they were stealing champagne from the back of the truck, Tom came to his senses. He backs up and knocks the villains over. Then he drives off at full throttle, but there are more German soldiers lurking in the woods. They open fire on the car. Tom loses control and crashes into a ravine. The officer was thrown from the car and lost consciousness. That's how he was captured. He wakes up in a German prison. The Gestapo interrogated him cruelly. They took away his shoes and kept him in a cold cell for 3 days. Despite his frostbitten feet, Tom seems to refuse to speak. He was then pushed into a crowded goods wagon. Despite the beautiful scenery, they are not going to Hogwarts, but to a concentration camp. Tom struggles in the cold carriage. At an intermediate station, the train is attacked by an American plane. The POWs leave the wagon, and at that moment, an aerial bomb hits the train. To save themselves, they use their bodies to spell POW, and the planes stop bombing. But German soldiers regained control of the prisoners, and for 6 days in the freezing cold, they were taken to a concentration camp. In Augsburg, escape was punishable by death. To prove it, 3 escapees were hanged in front of the whole camp. But Colonel William McNamara has the courage to salute the fallen soldiers. He is a leader among the prisoners and secretly prepares an escape plan. Tom is invited to the officers' barracks where there is even a homemade radio. Lieutenant Hart survived 6 days on a train, another 6 days on foot, and 3 days of interrogation, but did not give up his military secret. Colonel McNamara immediately knew it was a lie because he had been interrogated for a month, and Tom surrendered after the first stage of interrogation. Of course, the colonel doesn't say anything out loud, but instead of the officers' barracks, Tom is sent to the enlisted men's one. In the flashback, Tom actually showed the Germans the fuel depot on the map to save his life. Now he feels like a traitor and wants to redeem himself.
I'm looking for who's in charge here.
On looks of things, I'd say Adolf Hitler.
In reality, it's a southerner called Vic Bedford who runs everything in the barracks. He greets Tom warmly and tells him about the harsh conditions. The doors are locked from the outside at night with 2 deadbolts, and there are rats in the toilets.
Press on, sir.
But there's a secret exit through the gutter.
I think this is the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets.
And Bedford ducked in and disappeared outside the barracks. In the morning, Bedford gives the newcomer new shoes for his mangled feet.
For the holiday season.
Just outside the camp is an ammunition factory where the Russian prisoners are forced to work. But everyone is talking about the newly arrived black airmen, Lieutenants Lincoln Scott and Lamar Archer. McNamara wants to put them in an enlisted man's barracks. Tom, as an officer, has to help them settle in. But the soldiers don't want to live in the same room with 2 Afro-Americans. Lieutenant Hart makes them all greet the officers properly. Only Bedford turns out to be a racist.
A pair of bars don't make you fit to share the same roof with white folks, boy.
That's Lieutenant, boy. You got that?
At night, Hart realizes he smuggled something into the barracks. In the morning, the rugby game is interrupted by the arrival of the camp commander. He is Colonel Werner Wesser, a German by birth, a Yale graduate, and a secret sympathizer with American culture. At this point, Bedford uses a loaf of bread instead of a ball and throws it to the starving Russian prisoners. Visser orders the guard to open fire. The prankster almost gets shot. Then the loaf is picked up by Colonel McNamara. Not afraid to die hard, he throws the bread to the starving men. Back at the barracks, Tom continues to defend the black officers against Vic's attacks. An angry Bedford demands payment for the boots and wants to take Tom's watch, but it's a gift from his father. Hart takes off the watch without hesitation.
It's gonna buy me a little civility.
In the middle of the night, German soldiers break into the barracks. They know that one of the prisoners is hiding a handmade weapon. Tom defends Vic. But during the inspection, the Germans find a bayonet under Lieutenant Archer's mattress. He is dragged out into the yard and dismembered in front of everyone. Lieutenant Scott realizes that his friend has been framed by Bedford.
Kill you, Bedford!
The Germans then unmistakably find a homemade radio and smash it to pieces.
Good night.
The next day, a dogfight breaks out over the camp. Judging by the emblem, it's a black pilot at the controls, and he manages to shoot down a German plane. The fighter destroys buildings and sets fire to the clubhouse. Colonel McNamara orders the fire to be put out. When the Germans inspect the building, they may discover his ingenious escape plan. At night, Tom notices that Bedford's bunk is empty again. Scott follows him out through the night hatch. Panic ensues when Bedford's body is spotted in the street. Suspicion immediately falls on Officer Scott. The guard claims to have caught him over the body. Scott is about to be shot by the guards. Colonel McNamara suggests a court-martial first. The camp commandant finds this amusing and authorizes a court-martial in the clubhouse. Tom is sure of Scott's innocence. He convinces Werner not to touch the crime scene and to take photos of the evidence for the trial. For his initiative, the colonel appoints him as Lieutenant Scott's lawyer. Tom develops a line of defense. He proposes to confess to the fight, but not to the murder.
Can I fire you?
After Bedford, he came out of the barracks and wanted to kick the bastard, but he was already dead. Someone had snapped his neck. So who killed him? At the morgue, Tom examines Bedford's body, but is confronted by the camp commander. Werner hands over a photograph of the crime scene, also Tom's watch. It was in the dead man's hand. This is suspicious, and Tom wants to question the guards. At the trial, the guard claims to have seen Scott leaning over the body. Tom proves that the guard knew Bedford. He sold him boots and radio parts for American cigarettes and chocolate bars. At the impromptu trial, all the witnesses accuse Lieutenant Scott. Private Webb even claims to have seen him snap Bedford's neck, but Tom knows it's a lie. He looked out the same window and saw nothing. The camp commander invites Hart into his richly appointed office. He hands Tom a manual on the conduct of military tribunals.
I thought this one might be of particular use to you.
The commandant is secretly listening to jazz played by black musicians and suggests that Tom join in, but he leaves to prepare for the hearing. At the new hearing, Tom refers to the book. He wants to dismiss McNamara for not taking the court seriously. The captain calls a recess to speak with Tom alone.
I know the book, too.
Tom foiled McNamara and his plan. All he had to do was fulfill the role of a lawyer and not get in the way. But Tom takes the case much more seriously. After the meeting, McNamara visits the camp commander. He dismantles his Mauser and listens to the BBC News on the radio. Can Germany really lose? Seizing the moment, the colonel assembles a German Mauser and takes Werner at gunpoint.
Can't think of a more clever way out of this camp than that.
Bombs explode in the background. That's the sound of Germany's defeat. The photograph shows that the victim's cheeks and wrists were stained with something black. Hart suggests an experiment, so he stains his cheeks with gutaline. He fakes the murderer's attack on Bedford. During the struggle, the victim's hands and face were stained with gutaline, as pictured, so the killer's face was actually stained black to frame the African American. Scott had no need to do that. The prosecutor asks how Scott left the barracks. To avoid incriminating the others, Scott lies and says that he climbed out through the oven vent. If that were the case, Scott's face would be covered in soot. He sacrifices his defense for his comrades, and they condemn him to be shot. Scott can't hold back any longer. He's gone through a lot of humiliation to become a pilot. He knows it's harder for colored men in the Army, and he was prepared for that. What he wasn't prepared for was that no one would stand up for Archer. It was just terrible.
And so is this.
At night, Tom examines the dead man's bed and discovers a secret compartment. The next day,
Defense calls Oberst Werner Visser.
It's some kind of joke, Lieutenant.
the camp commandant didn't know Bedford, but he claims his guards did. Tom proves that guards Wirtz and Fusel were in cahoots with the murdered man. They're the ones Bedford got the boots and other stuff from. They were also specifically looking for weapons under Archer's bed, so someone tipped them off. They helped Bedford, and in return, he told them about the radio the guards found and smashed that night. Tom also found German documents and Reichsmarks in Bedford's hiding place. Who could he have gotten them from, if not the camp commandant?
Bedford traded with you and your men regularly.
But when he faltered, Werner ordered him to be killed. But the warden parries that they can kill a prisoner without hiding. Why would they smear their faces with soot? At night, Tom notices someone leaving the barracks. He Following the suspect, Tom enters the club and finds 2 soldiers covered in soot inside. Under the chest, Tom discovers a hidden underground passage. He climbs down and sees the soldiers hard at work. They are digging an escape tunnel and have already prepared German uniforms and explosives. Only then does Hart realize that the trial has been arranged to divert attention from the escape. Tomorrow is his last chance.
And I'm supposed to keep Visser and his men distracted while half the camp goes out.
Inside the club, Tom spots a group of soldiers led by McNamara.
I've just seen the tunnel, Colonel.
In here, Lieutenant.
Now it's clear that Bedford was killed for collaborating with the Germans.
First he told the Germans about the radio. It was only a matter of time before he told them about the tunnel. You killed Bedford.
That's right.
35 people will escape during tomorrow's trial. Cut. Then Scott will be executed.
One man has to be sacrificed to take out that target.
That one man should be you.
In the morning, McNamara feigns soup poisoning. At the court hearing, he falls out of his chair and is taken to the barracks. Tom informs Scott that an escape is in the works.
During deliberations, you're going out under the wire with 35 other men.
But he refuses to escape because he can't get lost among the Aryans. Scott wants to sacrifice himself to give the others a chance. While the prosecutor accuses Scott, one by one the soldiers make their way to freedom. Lieutenant Tom Hart begins his final speech, and the first prisoners have already escaped from the concentration camp. Tom claims that Scott is an honest man and serves his country sincerely. But in the camp, he was bullied by Bedford. He was a racist, a traitor, a snitch, the enemy of every prisoner.
Question is, who hated him enough to kill him? I did.
Tom confesses to the murder to save an innocent defendant. At that moment, Colonel McNamara escapes from the camp. Werner orders Lieutenant Hart to be shot immediately. The entire camp staff gathers to watch, and then Werner gets word that 35 prisoners are missing. He rushes to the clubhouse and notices that dirt hidden in the attic is falling from the ceiling. Werner immediately realizes that he's been tricked. He orders everyone involved in the tribunal to be shot. Suddenly, Werner is called out. There's a man in a German uniform at the entrance to the camp. It's Colonel McNamara. He surrenders voluntarily to the camp commandant. And behind his back, an explosion goes off in the weapons factory. McNamara has decided to sacrifice his life to save many. Tom salutes the colonel. The camp commandant pulls out a Mauser and kills him. Now every prisoner salutes a hero, and Wesser walks away morally defeated. After 3 months, Germany capitulates and all the prisoners go home to their families.